Hey, what you reading for?
Murder, mutilation, torture, dismemberment. What does any of that have to do with romance? Admittedly, I am not an expert in romance. However, the last two relationships I was in both cases, my partner and I, we simultaneously developed an interest in true crime. Neither of us was interested in true crime before the relationship. I don't know, maybe just the simple fact of us being together in a relationship that brought out in us a fascination for death and murder. And now, currently, I am not in a relationship and zero interest in true crime. It's puzzling. Could be a coincidence. I don't know. I just thought I'd put it out there. Maybe you've had a similar experience. Maybe you have a theory as to what's going on there. I will tell you, in the last few months of 2023, I spent binging on 70s and 80s horror novels. And then one early January morning, I woke up, I said to myself, okay, what horror novel am I going to read next, right? And then this thought came to me. It wasn't really a thought, it was a craving. It was, no, I'm not going to read a horror novel. I want to read a romance book. I want to read a love story. What? Like out of the blue. Strange. Maybe something I ate? I don't know. I mean, the supermarket that I frequent, they had a sale on cherry tomatoes. So I go to the supermarket and I'm like, oh, I eat salads quite regularly. And usually I get like big, proper tomatoes, chop them up, put them in my salad. But I figured, oh, there's a sale on cherry tomatoes. I'll mix it up. I'll just get those cherry tomatoes, right? And the next day I wake up wanting to read a romance book. I don't know. Coincidence? Maybe. Problem is, I don't know anything about romance books. I don't know who the great romance authors are. I don't know what the great romance books are. So I went on to Google and I found a list called 10 Best Horror Books That Celebrate the Power of Love. Now, I have been led astray by lists on Google before, so I was skeptical. So what I did was I put out a video where I went through the list and read the blurbs and talked about what interested me from each book and what things I wasn't interested in. I was hoping to find at least one book from that list that I would read, but I was also hoping to get some feedback and some suggestions from the viewers. And I did. I got a lot of feedback from the viewers. And many viewers, even though I said that I was more interested in contemporary romance, many viewers suggested I read Jane Austen. Now, I don't know what happened to me in my life. I don't know what Jane Austen trauma I experienced and subsequently repressed. But the thought of me reading Jane Austen has me wanting to do bodily harm to myself. In fact, I hurt my shoulder just shivering from the thought of reading Jane Austen. I don't know. It's not a rational aversion. I suspect that she's a great author who writes great books. I mean, she's popular for a reason. I don't know. Maybe, you know what it is? I'm afraid that if I read Jane Austen, I'm going to turn into one of them. You know, those people you meet at parties or picnics. You meet them at picnics. And like you strike up a conversation about books. And then one of them will like start talking about Jane Austen, right? But you notice something about the voice. It's not like a conversational voice. Like their voice gets kind of loud when they're talking about Jane Austen. And then pretty soon there's like 3 or 4 of them like in a semicircle around you talking about Jane Austen. So for me, I have to say, I have to admit that I've never actually read Jane Austen before. And then they like give a look at each other, and then one of them will say to me like, oh, but you simply must. But it's not a suggestion. I mean, there's a threat in there. They're trying to be coy, but also I get what they're saying. I'm picking up what they're putting down, right? And then another one of them will hand me a glass of white wine, right? And thankfully, this sixth sense alerts in me that they've definitely slipped something in that wine. They're going to drug me and take me back to their flat, which has a lot of old furniture with cabinets with locks in them and tables with doilies on them. And then they'll sit me in that big chair with the polyester seat coverings that stick to my skin, and they'll force me to read Pride and Prejudice while they drink that strange smelling tea and stare at me. So you don't drink the wine, right? I definitely do not drink the wine. I'm usually quick on my feet when this happens, and I'll say to them, yeah, Jane Austen. I'm definitely going to read some Jane Austen. And then I'll think of an excuse to get out of that picnic and rush home. And you know, every single time this happens, it's only once that I'm safe at home and I think back and I realize that at that picnic, someone brought a salad with cherry tomatoes. Now, I'm just dipping my toes in this romance thing. I'm just testing the romance waters. I'm not ready to dive all in, and I'm not ready to read Jane Austen right now. I don't even have any doilies. But the viewers did recommend other authors that I found intriguing. For example, they recommended Sarah Waters, Emily Henry, Tal Bauer, C.L. Beaumont. All of those authors sounded intriguing to me. I did not read any of those authors. Instead, I read Normal People by Salley Rooney. Now, I chose to read Normal People because it had gotten some literary praise, or some critical praise. I think it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize, I believe. And it's set in Ireland, so I like that setting. And I was under the impression, I guess I must have misunderstood the blurb, but I was expecting a story about two people who meet at university, and then we follow them as they become adults, and then they fall in love. That was my expectation. That really wasn't what happened in the book. So I get me a copy of Normal People. I open up, start reading. It's in the present tense. Now, I have a strong aversion to Jane Austen, but I have an even stronger aversion to present tense narration. So immediately I thought I was going to have to abandon the book. But I flipped through in the middle of the book and I saw that it was written in the past tense. So I figured maybe it's just some kind of quirky present tense introduction. So I decided to just grin and bear it and plow ahead. It turns out that the book goes back and forth between present tense and past tense narration. Like a section will start in the present tense and then it will flash back into the past. And then at the end of the section, then we start over again in the present, etc., etc. It was distracting at first, but after a while, I kind of got used to it and I got over it. The writing is not bad. The pacing is not bad either. The first thing I noticed after I got past the present tense introduction, the first thing I noticed after coming off a binge of dozens and dozens and dozens of horror books is that reading romance, the stakes are so low. It's kind of shocking. I mean, a horror, like the characters are running and fighting for their lives or their sanity or both. But in romance, it's, oh, did I say something to upset him? Or is he interested in me? Like those are the stakes. They're just shockingly low in comparison. Reading Normal People was a strange experience coming from horror. It's a book about a relationship, but it kind of felt like being in a relationship. I mean, had a lot in common. I was nervous about getting into it. I had to ask all my friends their opinion. I decided not to listen to my friends and went into it anyway. A little ways in, I was got to thinking that it would probably be more interesting with a bit more blood and violence. I found myself less interested in the romantic lead, but more interested in the mother. And at the end, I was disappointed. So, a book about a relationship that, while I was reading it, felt like being in a relationship. What I liked about the book, I liked the setting. The book bounces back and forth between a small town in Ireland and the capital, Dublin. It doesn't really take advantage of either setting, but it's still nice to spend some time in Ireland. I liked that the book addresses or explores some unconventional sex, even unhealthy sex. I thought that was a daring choice by the author, and I thought that was well done. What I didn't like about the book, really the characters. I mean, it's a character story, and the characters are pretty weak, I thought. The female lead is okay. She was fine, I guess. The male lead was bland, incredibly passive, apathetic. His mother, though, was interesting. She's a single mother and she cleans the houses of rich people for a living, but she never wallows in self pity and she holds her head up high. And she's still quite young and vibrant, so I would be interested in following her adventures and finding romance, but her son, not so much. And the female lead, she has a brother who is really like a cartoon villain. So the characters were quite disappointing. The female lead, she has an interesting dynamic with some of her friends, but it's not really explored. It felt like a missed opportunity. I was under the impression that we were going to follow these two leads into adulthood. That's not what happens. These characters, they meet in high school, and we follow them into and through their first year at university, which was quite disappointing. I wanted to read a love story between adults, and like fully mature adults. And I have nothing against young people, university students. I mean, they need love too, and I really wish and I hope for them to find love and find happiness. Just that I'm not interested in knowing all the details about how they go about it. So I felt a bit disappointed in that. I mean, the book, it's called Normal People. It's not Normal Will Become People. So I felt that was a bit misleading. It's really about university students. I didn't hate the book. I didn't love it either. I suppose Normal People is about as interesting as I should expect normal people to be. And since this was my first experience with Salley Rooney, the question is, do I want to read more from Salley Rooney? And I think I'm good. There was enough in her writing for me to think that her success is justified. Like, I get why people like her, but there wasn't enough really to have me wanting more. Now, did reading Normal People, did that satisfy my craving for romance, for a love story? No, it did not. It did not. I was looking for a love story between two adults, and that's not what Normal People gave me. So, yeah, it did not satisfy my craving. Did it turn me off from the romance genre? I mean, it wasn't a great introduction, I'll be honest with you. But I have to think that there's a romance book out there for me. There's a love story that I would enjoy. I mean, last year I loved Song of Achilles. So, and I can't think that experience was unique. I think there's another love story out there that I will love just as much. I think the next romance book I'm going to read is going to be a queer romance book. It's not just because Song of Achilles is a queer love story, and I love that book. But I think there are some authors like Tal Bauer and C.L. Beaumont. I think they write queer romance, and I've heard good things about them, so I want to check them out. A few days ago, I mentioned this to someone, and they asked me, in a tone I didn't much care for, I'll say, they asked me why I would be interested in reading queer romance if I myself am not queer. Now, my instinct was to respond, why wouldn't I be interested in? But I thought that that might be a bit too aggressive for the way that the conversation was headed. And I should have said, because I loved Song of Achilles, I should have said that, but that's not what I thought of at the moment. What I said instead, and I'll share it with you here, probably doesn't hold up, but I'll share it anyway, is I said that, well, the advantage of reading a queer romance book is that it is difficult for authors to write for the gender that they are not. Like, as a male writer, it's more difficult for me to write for a female character. It's not impossible. There are some authors who do it very well. But it does. But if you read a queer book, like presumably a male author writing about a male and male romance, or a woman writer who writes woman romance, it does remove that level of difficulty, or removes that obstacle. And normal people kind of confirmed that ridiculous theory, because the male characters in this book are really bland and weak, and it is a weakness in this book, like the weakness in the book. But after I had this conversation with that person, I thought of many examples that that's not the case. So I don't think it's a theory that holds much water, if I'm being honest. Although normal people did confirm it. But I guess the reason I want to read queer romance is because I want to check out Tal Bauer and C.L. Beaumont. And why wouldn't I? Much better answer, I think, in retrospect. Anyway, do you have any experience with normal people, or the work of Salley Rooney? Have you read Jane Austen? And have you been able to control your addiction to cherry tomatoes? I always enjoy hearing from you and reading your feedback in the comment section. Thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next video. Death, murder, torture, dismemberment. What does any of that have to do with romance? Here you go. Here's a